You have found a place to belong here on the Circle of Friends. I am your guest host this week, Leanne Miller, and I'm so glad that you've joined us. I now live in Worcester, Ohio. I used to live here in Holmes County, but we've recently moved, so I kind of traded the country life for the city life. Well, I don't know if Worcester's a big town city, but it is very different than living in the country, and I love it. And I'm here today with Amy Slayball and Bill and Carolyn Anstein, and we are talking about we're really talking about illness and faith and parenting a child that was diagnosed with an illness at age 9, right? And how
Yes.
you navigate through that. When you all were talking, I was reminded of my own experience with a child with something serious and kind of how I handled that. I feel like there was ways I handled it really well, and then there was part of me that was panicking. Our son had while he was in college, he had a retinal detachment, and he is a geology major, so his vision is a huge deal. I mean, it's important that he's able, to see, and it was an emergency surgery, and they didn't know he had to have a sclera buckle put around his cornea and his retina to help it reattach, and he just so happened to be dating a girl whose grandfather owned an eye clinic who specialized in glaucoma and retinal detachment. And so
Meant to be.
yeah. So God showed me right up front that this wasn't taking him by surprise. But it did me. I was like, what? How is this happening? He messaged me. They were playing board games, and he messaged me and said, "Mom, I'm seeing black in my left eye, like I'm having this black come across my vision." And he had had some eye issues the summer before, but this was different. And so he had this surgery, and he comes out of surgery, and the surgeon, tells him that it went really well. And even before surgery, the surgeon put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Could I pray for you and for this surgery?" And so God was definitely showing up, and I know that part of that was for me, because I think you doubt in those times. You doubt that, well, hello, do you know this is happening? Like, really, you start to wonder. And he came out of surgery and everything was fine, and he had a patch on his eye, and on the way home he said, "Hey, Mom, let's stop at Long John Silver's because maybe they'll feed me for free because I'm a pirate." And he was making jokes, and I was laughing, but at the same time I almost wanted to sob, because this is our kid. This is serious. He could lose his vision. So how... and I'm sure there was doubts for you all. There's got to be some questioning and some doubting that goes on when your child's faced with dying, and you're faced with losing a child. How did you navigate those feelings, and how did you deal with it with your faith? Because that feels hard. That feels hard. That feels hard to want to keep believing.
For me, that was never a problem. I, of course, worried that we might lose Amy. That I did not have the complete faith that she would survive, but I had complete faith that she was with God, and that any moment that I had with her was a gift from God, and how lucky we were that we had this child and that we had her the length of time we had Amy. It was never a lack of faith with my thinking of God, why? Because things happen to everyone.
How about you, Bill?
A major memory that I have was leaving the hospital after 3 months, and they told us that Amy's chances of survival were not good. That was probably the worst day of my life.
Sweet.
And here we are.
Yeah. So how did you navigate that, Bill? Did you just keep moving? Did you pray? Did you how do you get through it?
We were very involved in a church group that provided a lot of support. We had family members who jumped in and took care of our children. And I kind of retreated into an activity called windsurfing.
Yeah,
Spent a lot of time
on the ocean.
hanging out with friends and learning new skills, but it was an escape. There's no question about it. But at the same time, she was always on my mind, always an inspiration, and couldn't have asked for a better experience.
It's great. Now you still windsurf, don't you?
Yes,
And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
75.
75, and you windsurf. You also snowboard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Took
do.
that up 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So, do you feel like if there's a dad listening, like that's facing something serious with a child, do you feel like finding an outlet like that's really important for a lot of men?
All I can say is that it really helped me. It was let's say, a alternative to sitting and worrying, and
Did it readjust your perspective and your focus? Because when you experience things like the ocean and the wind,
Oh, no question.
yeah,
No question. Riding the wind is just, even today, it's phenomenal.
so if you go out there and you get your leg bitten by a great white shark, you're fine going out that way, right?
Absolutely.
Yep, okay.
And maybe that's where I get a little bit of my.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to say this is some of her adventure, and also it's one of the reasons I think that I can cope with Matt. If he loses a leg, I'll say he's happy. It happened because he's happy.
Seriously, I was sitting here listening to Mom answer that question for Leanne. I thought, oh, maybe that's where I get that. And then hearing Dad answer that, I thought, oh, that's where I get that.
Right.
You asked Mom if she ever doubted, if her faith was ever rocked when she found out that I had this diagnosis. And I can say, Mom, I've heard her say this verbally, not just in my case, but over and over I've heard my mom say, when bad things hit, she doesn't understand the questioning, why me? Because we know these things happen. And Mom always says, why not me? I love that, Mom. And I've just heard you say that over and over. And I watched your face when she asked you the question, like, well, no, because you never did doubt. I'm just an amazing faith. And it's not just me. My brother's diabetic. Mom's gone through a lot of issues of her own. She survived breast cancer twice. They have some drama from when they were young. My mom had a miscarriage. My dad had to sign up for the draft because of the miscarriage. He went to Vietnam. He was shot in the hospital for a year. And so their lives have not been easy, but Mom through it all is always like never, ever, ever doubted God, or that did not affect your relationship with God.
And my faith in him, I couldn't have survived. I mean,
Yeah.
God was always there for me, and I truly pray that feeling is there for all my children,
Okay.
for what they have in life.
Yeah.
That God will give them that strength.
And then as far as living life to its fullest and not worrying about the repercussions, man, Dad, I get that from you. So
Yes.
that hayride, that was all you. Because Mom has said Dad has done dangerous things. And I remember when I was high school, he was out during a storm on the ocean and he didn't come home for hours. I remember crying and Mom saying, you know what, she gave up worrying about Dad a long time ago. And she said pretty much what she said now. If he dies doing what he loves, and she can't stress over him because she'd go crazy. So
Well, have you ever heard
trust
that
God.
saying, an idle mind is the devil's playground?
Yeah.
You know, if you
Yes.
would have just sat on a couch in a living
Worried.
room and worried and not taken up windsurfing or not done some things to remind you that the world's a bigger place and that we serve a pretty grand and big God, it would, I think you can go almost crazy
could.
with
You
worry.
certainly could.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're facing something like a chronic illness and death. I mean, those are things that's a little bit different than worrying about whether your child's FAFSA report comes back, beneficial to your family. I mean, it is a different, you're talking about a different set of life rules there and a different way of dealing with your everyday life when you don't know if you have, tomorrow. And I will say that I think that you've parented that way too, Amy. You and Tim have parented in a way that the boys are full of adventure and full of, Charlie's is he in Germany?
right now
Do
he's
you
in
know where
Switzerland.
he is?
But he just dove off a cliff. Everybody else is jumping off, and they had been in there 20 minutes, and so he thought, oh, I feel pretty confident diving. He actually told me a story about him and a girl. He told this girl, I think I'm going to dive, and the girl ran ahead of him and dove. But so it was just the two of them that dove. But yeah, he's diving off cliffs in Switzerland right now.
Yes, both are very full of adventure. In fact, I've seen him dive off things that I'm like, I don't think I would have done that. But I think that you've parented that way. That the boys live pretty full lives, and I think it's important that we live life to the fullest every day we've been given. And I think that when you're keenly aware that this might be your last day,
right.
You live differently. So tell me, and we will definitely delve into this more when we come back from the break, but give us a little teaser, Amy, of how you have navigated your faith with your illness.
Well, absolutely, my illness has been a blessing. I know that may sound odd to some people, but I know some people get it. When I was 9, I absolutely, 100%, no, God could have healed me. 100%. He can heal me today, 100%. I believe that. I have full faith in that. But I also know sometimes there's a reason with not being healed. And my parents, when I was in the hospital, my dad mentioned the church we were in. He brought the elders. We were in Cleveland, and our church was in Hurtville, so it was an hour drive. The elders of our church came up, surrounded me, prayed over me, anointed me with oil, and we believed that God could heal me. And full faith. So I was not healed. I was not healed because of a lack of faith. I was, God chose to give me a miracle in a different way. Like, I just keep going and going and ticking and ticking. And honestly, if he had healed me 100% when I was 9, I think human nature is to kind of
forget.
Yeah, that's awesome, but then forget about it. Because what I do, I live with this daily. And I've thought about this actually with the past 2 years, with my health going down further. It is way more visible that I have a handicap. I've lived in this community forever, and I'm a high energy person, and a lot of people don't know about my disease because, like I said, I'm high energy, but what they don't know is if I do something, I have to go home and rest, maybe a full day, to feel good enough to do something else.
Right.
So it's kind of, what do you call those kind of things? People say this about a hidden illness, like mental illness. Mm-hmm. Yes, a hidden illness in some ways. But now that it's declined, it's obvious. You're with me, you walk up steps with me, it's obvious. I'm struggling to breathe. And it gives me more opportunities to glorify God because it's visible. And so I can talk about these things that God's done. I can talk about, oh my gosh, when people feel bad for me, my doctor literally, I went in to do oxygen tests to see if I needed portable oxygen. My doctor cried. And I remember telling him, this is good. This is what I want. I love the oxygen at home has helped me so much. I want the oxygen. This is good. This is good, right? And he's, I forget where I was going with that. But basically, I feel like I'm thriving. I can't breathe, but I'm thriving. And it's been a blessing.
Okay, well, we will come back, and after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about faith and illness. And you have certainly found a place to belong here on the Circle of Friends.
What should I wear? Our boutique at the Village Gift Barn has the answers. Arriving daily, our clothing is a delight. You will enjoy our wide variety and the uniqueness of each style. We offer many accessories to complete any outfit. Your answers can be found in our boutique that is never ordinary. Village Gift Barn, Berlin, Ohio.
You see all things into the corners of each heart. Everything is in your hands, from the cradle to the stars. And you take our dreams and all we hope to be. Through joy and tears, pain and laughter, we know you'll never leave. There's nothing better in this world that we could ever find. Oh, your truth gives life. You came to set the captives free, and you've opened up our eyes.
you have found a place to belong here on the Circle of Friends, and we're so glad that you're joining us. And we're here with Amy and Bill and Carolyn, and we're talking about illness and faith and navigating the two together and what that looks like. And, Amy, you were talking before the break, you were talking about how your lung disease is a blessing. And I have heard people say before that their cancer has been a blessing. And, when you aren't in that, or you haven't navigated through that with faith, those comments are hard to understand, like what that actually really means. Like, how can you be actually thankful for something that almost takes you out? So let's talk about the navigation of that, like how that really looks in your world right now, how your disease is a blessing, because that does sound so counterintuitive. It doesn't sound like the two go together. And it sounds like, to be honest, it sounds like a Christian thing to say. It sounds like we kind of program ourselves to say certain things within our faith that don't make sense to some people. So break it down in layman's terms, like what, I know you were talking about it a little bit before the break, but again, tell me what it means for this to be a blessing to you, or a good thing.
I have an outlook on life that I would never have had if I hadn't survived this, or come from where I came from and had that prognosis of probably dying within the year or 3 months, whatever it was. Life is a gift, and I understand what you're saying. It sounds like the Christianese thing to say, but it's 100% real. The ways I've been blessed, I try not to take things for each day for granted. I think sometimes I can slip into that, but I don't hold on tight to my children. I let them live. I'm so thankful. My relationship with God has become so deep, and I just think it's so much more real through the struggle. And I know that's true with everybody. Often we grow in our struggle. Our struggles are the times where we grow deeper with Christ.
Do you feel like the fight for, like, sometimes, like, if we do something, if we walk out to the beach and back, because we vacation together, when you're fighting for your breath, do you feel like it makes you more grateful for when you have to fight for something, when you have to struggle through something? I think there is a truth that we become more grateful for that thing. So if you have to struggle for air, it makes you more grateful for air. It makes you even more grateful for the oxygen, which, by the way, Amy let me try her oxygen. I felt like it was, what were we saying when I was trying your oxygen?
You felt like you were suffocating.
Yeah, it was just blowing up my nose. I was like, no, I can't do it.
She slid off the chair. It's pretty dramatic.
Amy said she's almost like Pavlov's dogs. When she sees the oxygen, she's like, oh, I want that.
Yes, I thought it really wasn't helping. The first step was using oxygen at night. And then my doctor or other people would say, is that helping? And I think, I don't know. It's relaxing. But what I'm really needing is help up the steps, or help to do the thing. And I don't know if it at night is helping me with that. But it was like Pavlov's dog, because I'm a night owl. I don't look forward to going to bed. But when I thought about the oxygen, I thought, ooh, I get to lay. Seriously, my body was craving it. I didn't even know. So in those moments where I can't breathe, yes, you take things.
Yes.
You do cherish things that normal people take for granted. There is that. That's true. But the blessings don't stop. So often I'm like, I have a certain outlook or a certain thing or certain characteristic, and people ask, how is that or whatever. So much of it ties to being raised this way, being raised not knowing that I'll be alive next year. And I can't say that's like on my mind all the time, but I think being raised like this gives you a different perspective. And I know my doctor, one of my older doctors, cystic fibrosis doctors, he says his cystic fibrosis patients are so special, if they get to adulthood at that time. When I first was diagnosed, CF, the average lifespan was 14. But obviously, some live to be older. But he said his CF patients, as adults, how unique, and he gave me different things that happen that he finds with kids that have a prognosis of death. Something happens in them that makes them extremely special, and he sees that. So,
well, I think that's part of the blessing. I mean, I think that's part. I think you're defining also how it's a blessing to other people, because people see the difference in a person that knows how special their life is and how special it is to be alive. And and I'm certainly not discounting you saying that your disease has been a blessing. It's just something that I've.
It's true, yeah.
It feels like almost like a phrase sometimes that people say, and I want
It's
to
the
know
thing they're
exactly,
supposed to say as a
right. I
Christian,
want to know
yeah.
exactly what that means, because it just. I want to say as your friend, no, it's not. It's not a blessing. But I see you live it out, so I know that you believe that. I know that you believe that this has given you a different life, and not a life of someone who has normal lungs, but a life of someone who, believes that this is. Well, it reminds me of Paul, the thorn. He was living with a thorn in his side that he feels that God allowed to be placed there and stay there. And so, it kind of reminds me of that. Like you just.
An example of, like, here's just one of the blessings. I'm not sure what you said that just made this one pop into my mind, but this is just one example of so many. And I think, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I think I'm not special in this. I mean, I really feel like as believers in Christ, if we believe what we say we believe, there are lessons in everything.
Yes.
And I know this might sound like the Christian thing to say, but it's so true. I just want everything I do to glorify God. And when things are thrown at me that are hard, like anybody else, like, I'm not saying my lung disease is hard, but there's other things that are very hard. I really have never felt my lung disease was hard, but I've experienced things that are hard. In that, I look for the lesson,
Right,
and I look
right.
and I really think that's what we all should be doing. Do we believe what we say we believe? God uses all things for the good for those that love Him. I think that's Romans 8:28, and I believe it. And so I'm looking for that thing that's going to turn this to good. And even if it's not my good, ultimately it is my good, because to bring God glory is for my good. And so that might sound trite, that might sound cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, it's
And,
true. It's also the verse that talks about what the enemy intends for evil, God intends
Totally.
for good. So we either believe that He's in it for our good and good can come out of it, because we live in a fallen world. These things will happen. They do happen. We live in a broken place. I mean,
Here's one of the blessings I thought of, and there's just so many. I wish I would have made a list before we did this. But one of the things, I went through a phase when my kids were little, right after having them, I'd say from infants to 5th or 6th grade, I was sick all the time. I got pneumonias like 4 or 5 times a year. I had to have help where people helped me with my kids. I remember laying on the floor, sitting on the floor, and let my kids climb on me and crawl on me, and just being on the floor with them, because I couldn't get off the floor. And so, but in those times, not when I was that sick, but in times where I had to be super protective of my health. Like I said, people didn't know. I would be the Bible school teacher. Every week I did Bible school. The next week I was sick. It was hard for me to say no back in those days, so I did a lot of good, service type things, but my family suffered in that I was out and Tim had to pick up the slack.
right.
So, but I get better at saying no. In the 40s, I got better, and I'm getting better every day.
You are so good.
But because I worry what people think, what it looks like. They need Sunday school leaders. People aren't signing up for Sunday school. I know that's important. I don't want to give the message that it's not. So I do it, even though I know I shouldn't have, So, and I think this is what we need to learn at the book, what is the book Beth has talked about? Your best yes. There's times where you can say yes to very good things, but it's taking up time for the things you should be saying yes to.
Yes.
And so I had to get over that, worrying what people think and doing too much. But anyways, in this time period where I really had to take it slow, it was time where I could sit and meditate on God's word. I could read through the Bible. I could spend precious time alone with God. And during that phase, I don't want to go through the long story how I was challenged to do this, but I was challenged to read through the Bible every year. And if you read 5 chapters a day, 5 days a week, you can get through the Bible in 11 months. It's not a plan, somebody's specific plan. I would read 5 one day, skip 2 and catch up, days later. But basically that's phenomenal, I think. 5 chapters a day, that takes a half hour, and you can get through the Bible in 11 months. With 2 days off. So it's a loose plan. So I did that 3 years in a row, and then with the healthier I got, it would take 2 years to get through the Bible, and then 3 years. So I remember in that time period, the period of 7 or 8 years, getting through the Bible 5 times. I don't want to say I couldn't do that. if I was healthy and running around and busy like everybody else. But my disease forces me to slow down and not be busy. And that's not easy in today's society. And I should be doing it more now. But
Well, one thing
when it forces me to slow down, the benefit was that precious time with God. And before I listened to Beth, I don't know what week on here, but just talking about those moments in God's Word with God are so beneficial in changing our lives, that those sweet 7 years where I was very sick, but spending that kind of quality time with God, I remember thinking, gosh, at noon, like I'd get up early in the morning and start, my time with God, and noon would roll around. I'd be like, I don't want to stop. Now, I don't feel like that now. Now it's more of a discipline, and my quiet times are whatever. I mean, I have great ones now, but there was that window in time where I spent so much time with God, I hated to turn it off. And that was precious, and that was only because of my disease. Blessing.
Good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, now Bill and Carolyn, how about as an adult? How do you navigate parenting watching Amy as an adult? Because I'm sure there's some things that you would like to say, oh, I don't think you should do that.
Well, family gatherings are a special time. We have 18, including all the grandchildren. And a gathering without Amy is not a gathering.
That's awesome.
She is definitely the highlight of our family and brings us all together, and just makes a wonderful time.
Do you worry about her still as an adult? I mean, is there...
No.
No, it's not worrying.
Oh, Dad, I had chickens. I don't know how many years ago, and I hadn't seen that face since probably that hayride. But we got chickens because we wanted the eggs, and they started out in the apple orchards, but they became a little bit tame, and they'd come up on the porch. And as soon as he knew I had chickens, he was ticked.
Yeah, he's like,
and
"Get rid
he
of that
stayed
chicken."
silent for maybe a year. And but I loved the chicken would come up and lay eggs in my flower box right outside my window.
I'm on Bill's team.
My father came up the steps. Look, he's not even smiling now. He doesn't think this is a funny story. But he said, "Where's your axe?" Because, he said, he's cutting their heads off. He's cutting all of our chickens' heads off. And I laughed. No, I saw that look. And he was ticked. He still won't smile. Look at him. Oh, my word.
Well, because...
But he was going to cut my chickens' heads off because...
He didn't.
And that was,
don't get
what,
worried.
10 years ago? Yeah. So I forget your question. But
Well,
No, that if he worries as
the
an adult.
reason for that is because aspergillus thrives in chicken droppings. And even though Amy wasn't raised on a chicken farm, she tore a bird's nest apart the summer that she was diagnosed with a problem.
a dog tore it apart in front of me.
Well,
I didn't tear it
anyhow,
apart.
anyhow,
My nose, a dog did it right on me.
You were
That's-
exposed to
yeah.
bird droppings that summer, and we think that's where it came from, but that was my reasoning.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it.
Bird
you know,
poop, not
there's
just-
nothing quite greater than the love of a parent for their children, and we're gonna dive deeper into this topic. We're so glad you're here, and we're so glad that you've joined the Circle of Friends. You have found a place to belong here, and we're so glad that you've joined us.
Thanks to generous donations, this program is produced by Circle of Friends Ministries. You can write to us at P.O. Box 345, Berlin, Ohio 44610, or contact us at 330-852-0000. You've found a place to belong.